Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. We have 5 locations online, so we have Meade, West Central, Panhandle, Haskell Ag Lab, and NCTA, as well as here in Lincoln. Just a note, folks that are engaging, and then we're streaming live across the entire system, so we have a lot of folks that chime in that way. We have a little bit of technical difficulty with the playing of videos. Hi, Mike. Playing of videos. You can see them if you're not in Lincoln, but you can't hear. So stay with us. The videos aren't long, so you'll get the picture and you can take a look. Well, I want to start by saying welcome to 2018. Holy camole, right? 2018, and it's already February. It's absolutely insane. I want to say thanks for everything that you do in our core mission areas of teaching and learning, research and innovation, outreach and engagement. We really do make an impact, and it's because of our people. It's hard for me to believe that I've been here now a year, and in a good way, it feels like home, and it feels like I've been here longer. And really want to say thank you on a personal note for making me, and my wife joined me in May after school was out. Our daughter joined us in June. She's a Lincoln Public School teacher, special ed teacher, so she landed. In fact, my wife our son landed at Fort Collins on a temporary position and took a position now at Xavier University. So my wife and son are driving back to Cincinnati, so it's I think everybody's getting settled in, and I just want to say thanks, because just moving can be crazy. I've had so much fun learning and listening, and I have so much more learning to do, so thanks for your patience at helping me learn. Like any good student, it takes 7 or 8 times to hear it, and so I appreciate that very much. This morning, I want to start with kind of a highlights of what's taken place and what's going on in the Institute since our last time together in September. And I will stop at a point where we are going to talk a little bit about some specifics and strategy, and I'm going to flip the mic over to our 5 deans. So Tiffany Hang-Moss will lead us off, Ron Rosati, followed by Beth Dahl, who will pass the baton over to Chuck Hibbard, and then Archie will bring it home. I'll follow that up with some updates, administrative type updates, and then we'll talk a little bit about this thing called the budget, because I know a lot of people are thinking about that, and then we'll stop and we'll open it up for questions. So we'll move at a pretty good clip. If those of you online have questions, just use the web forum and we'll get that taken care of. So when I came here last year, I talked about what was special to me, and I can't stand there, you can't see. Wow. Haley Apel, who was helping me with this presentation, we started 2 weeks ago, but even at 6 o'clock this morning, we're talking on the phone, she's like, this is like being back at NASCAR. And I'm like, good, I hope I don't crash. So. But really pretty exciting. I said that Nebraska was special, the Institute was special, the university was special, first and foremost because of the people. We talked about the uniqueness of this place, and what a place it is, this amazing state that goes from 4,500 feet to 700 feet, and the agroecology and the communities of Nebraska, just absolutely amazing. Then we talked about the partnerships and how critical those partnerships with our commodity boards, with colleagues, both at the county and the cities and the towns, to the university campus, to around the globe, just absolutely phenomenal. And then the amazing possibilities and potential. And this year, I've just so amazing to explore this with you. When I came in, I learned about the 6 communities of practice. I don't need to talk too much about these. This was a journey that you started, those of you who were here, back in 2010 and 2011. And these communities are just as important today as they were then. We hired into these 6 communities, and what I've said to our faculty leaders multiple times at our meetings over the year is something special, something magic happened here that I don't think happens at other places, and that something magic is that rather than in the academic culture, units would come in and pound the table and say, I need this because Jim retired, or Mike retired, or Beth retired, or Becky retired, and we need to refill Becky's position. There was a coming together that really said, how can we drive impacts, and where are the gaps? And collectively, through the able leadership of our unit leaders, the faculty from across the Institute identified 140 positions, tenure track positions, and nearly 150 extension professional positions. So we have hired almost 300 new people in the last 5 years to the Institute. That's a 33% recharge rate in our extension professional corps, and that's 44% of the tenure track faculty line within the Institute, which leaves the Institute a net positive 70 positions from where we were in 2010. There aren't too many places that can say they've invested in the intellectual capacity, the engine of their institutions like we can. On this, we have put up some videos of each of these communities of practice, and I'm going to ask Warren to man the mouse or person a mouse and just showcase this. If you haven't seen the site, we put together, IANR Media helped put together 6 short vignettes, and if we scroll down to the bottom of this, there we go, there they are. So let's, if you go down one more, there you go. Let's go to the top left-hand corner to science literacy and just hit.
Streaming Science is a student-driven science literacy project highlighting the work of agricultural and environmental scientists conducting critical research in Nebraska. Through videos, podcasts, and online field trips, our students increase awareness of scientific issues while getting practical experience.
Really short, but for each of the communities we have a piece like this, so I'd encourage you to point people there and use them if you think that'd be appropriate. Let's go ahead and go back to the talk, Warren. Please, Warren. Just back to the PowerPoint. There we go. Great. One of the things that was new this year, and I think folks thought maybe I was a little bit crazy last February, Jill Brown, when I asked Jill and Jesse, find the largest venue that you can find in Lincoln outside of Memorial Stadium and the Pinnacle Bank Arena. Maybe next year we'll do Pinnacle Bank. And I wanted to hold a conversation. And that conversation came to be known as the Growing Nebraska Summit. And the idea was that we could, at the Cornhusker Hotel and Conference Center, that we would invite 600 folks who were passionate about growing Nebraska and bring those folks together. The best and brightest minds, the most passionate minds and individuals. And the rule was, the hope was that no more than 300 of us would be from the university, which meant the other 300 came from across Nebraska. We had 450 people, and about a third came from across Nebraska, from 54 counties and 70 towns. And it was a really terrific way to come together and hear from 12 of our faculty who gave really nice talks, TED-style talks, if you will. Jenny Keshwani's shown here. All of these talks are captured, so again, if you just look at Growing Nebraska Summit, you can go and take a look at the talks. It was a fantastic day, no question about it. We looked at 4 areas: creating a better quality of life, educating tomorrow's leaders, igniting a passion for creative solutions, and then feeding a growing world. And so what we did is we spent as much time talking with each other in tables of 8 as we did with these TED Talks. Thanks. We asked people throughout the day. We used technology. We asked people questions. We collected a lot of data. These data points were then used by our teams to help inform new position requests. This last, I've got some, there we go. These word doodle, and I don't see, John Carroll, are you in the room? John's not, so I'll talk about him. John and our S&R colleagues kept putting wildlife, 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 so we removed some of that behavior. So mostly it was enlightening and educational. It was overwhelming, you could see that. I think there was a lot of information flow. I like that last quote in the lower right-hand corner. IANR will be a key in empowering local communities' efforts to secure our food supply. We just can't pin our hopes on what the scientists might come up with while the rest of us merely look up. This was really a call to action from the state of Nebraska, and it was terrific. From there, throughout the fall and in January, we've had 2 Huerman lecturers. Both of these lecturers came with the intent of thinking globally and acting locally. That is a phrase that was around in the 60s and the 70s. I think it is as relevant today. We talk about all politics is local. We really do need to be thinking about the impact globally, the wicked grand challenges that society and humanity faces, but we can bring that right home. I think a lot about food insecurity, for example, and the bottom a billion people out of the 7.4, 7.5 folks around the globe who just are food insecure, water insecure. But we don't have to think about globally. We can just think here at home, where we have 230,000 plus or minus Nebraskans who are food insecure, and it's not in the city, it's not in rural parts, it's all over, and we need to pay attention to this. So the first person that we invited was Lourdes Govia. Lourdes is a professor emerita from UNO and was very instrumental in looking at demographics and immigration and migration. And her talk was Nebraska, if not immigrants, who? And I think Nebraska, you know it better than I, perhaps, but what an amazing place. In this year of journeys across the state, I've been to places, I've never been any place in my entire life where people took so much pride to say, "Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a 6th generation Nebraskan from Broken Bow." Oh my gosh, what? I've been to places where, just opposed, my people were Nebraskans before there was a Nebraska. So we often tell the story from Solomon Butcher and Willa Cather on, but in truth, this state has an amazing richness and diversity and heritage, and the people are amazing. But Lourdes' talk, for those of you who weren't able to attend, really looked at the first wave of immigration from, say, 1890 to 1925, when the U.S. Put rules and regulations in place. And then she looked at the second wave of immigration and migration to the U.S. from 1970 to where we are today, and provided us with lessons. And probably the most poignant lesson that I took away from her talk was that communities that are inviting to newcomers tend to do far better than communities that are restrictive. And I think there are lessons there. And then in January, Donnie Smith, who's the former CEO of Tyson, had an incredible run as the CEO, 7 years, talked about global food security, and he had a play on words, war of the words. And he started his talk with reminding us of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, and how people listening to that radio really believed that we were being invaded. And juxtapose that with where we're at today around messages related to food, health, food security, resilience, and how important it was for us to get data and facts on the table. And it tied so nicely into so much of what the Institute does. Global engagement is significant. We have 450 students from around the world, graduate and undergraduate, in Kasner. And that's about 15% of our students in Kasner coming from around the world. We have faculty and staff and students who are working actively in 100 countries around the globe. We had students that did study or education abroad in 17 countries last year. Just absolutely is incredible. We have an amazing program with Rwandan students. In fact, we'll be inviting, I think I've got this right, our third cohort. Where's Tiffany? Fourth cohort is coming. Our third cohort is here. That's 50 students per year. We have an amazing 3+1 program in the Food Science and Technology program that we'll talk about. I had the chance to go with the governor and his trade delegation to Japan. That was my first formal trade delegation. That was quite interesting. We spent a lot of time through that. We made an amazing connection with the CUPE group. The CUPE group, they've been around since 1909. They make mayonnaise and salad dressing and lots of other things, but they are the parent company of Henningsen Foods, who came to Nebraska and in around 2013 and have 3 production facilities in Nebraska. They've made 3 trips back to Nebraska to work with our food science and technology folks. And then later this week, in fact next Saturday, I'm on the plane with John Kerrigan and some of the economic development folks, and we're going to go back and visit their headquarters. The play that we're trying to make is for them to move their North American Research Center here to the Nebraska Innovation Campus. So that's the pitch. While we were in Japan, then we, if you remember last fall, North Korea did a lot of missile testing. As John Kerrigan and I left Tokyo and we landed in Beijing, only to learn that a missile was following. That wasn't following our plane, but thank goodness. They're not that sophisticated, knock on wood or plastic. So we landed. That was an interesting time. The time in Japan was absolutely fantastic to understand Japanese culture and to understand they're sitting at about 120 million people, and by 2050 their projection is that they will decrease their population through death and low birth rates by 1/3. Pretty incredible. And so they are really pushing the bounds, thinking about food, thinking about technology, and I think we have a real play there. This picture here is at our Yangling demonstration facility. So Yangling not only, and Chuck Hibbard is lead for us on this, and we took a group of 10 faculty to Yangling with Chuck. You can see the center pivot there. This is a piece of ground where we are demonstrating the state of the art when it comes to food production and irrigation. Interestingly, in Yangling, right in the breadbasket of China, is the Northwest Agricultural and Forestry University. In all regards, it's a lot like the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, complete with 2 campuses. And it is here that we have this amazing 3+1 program where they are using our food science technology program, and they are teaching it in English the first 2 years, cohorts of 50 students. The 3rd year, we're sending our faculty there to teach, and the 4th year, they're coming here. So the first cohort of students are coming here late this summer and will be joining us. When they graduate, then they graduate with a dual degree from both Northwest and from UNL. I have the dream that someday we'll be able to say to our incoming food science students that you get to pick where you do your 3rd year. You can do it here in Lincoln, or you can do it in Yangling. And we're connecting with multinational companies that will be looking for globally competent students and talent. Clayton Yider Institute for International Trade and Finance formally was approved by our Board of Trustees last December 5th, and I'm happy to report that from there it went to the Higher Learning Commission, or the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission here in Nebraska, and just on the 25th it was approved. So we can all applaud that. We formally have the Yider Institute. This was made possible through a very generous gift of Clayton Yider, who grew up in Eustis, Nebraska, and served on President Reagan's cabinet. Really, I didn't get a chance to meet him, an amazing individual who succumbed to cancer and passed away in April. But through his legacy, $8 million has been donated to go into an endowment to allow us to move this forward. We are in the process of hiring a professor of practice that will serve as the director of the Institute as we launch. We've hired Darcy Vetter as the first ever, I think, diplomat in residence. Darcy's from around Aurora, Nebraska, and actually was the chief trade negotiator for the TTP, which was pretty amazing. And so with her help, we are hiring in law, in IANR, and business, 3 named chairs and three professors, professorships. So that's exciting. Made my rounds. I didn't get to all 93 counties, but you know where I'm starting next year. I was thinking about this on the drive in. I always wonder, there's a lot to be said for the way what people drive or ride and how they take care of it, from people who just lease and turn them back in, to people who own and never change the oil, to people like me who drive archaic vehicles. I drive a 1992 Volvo wagon, and I drive a 2001 Chevy Suburban. And if it doesn't have 6 digits on I don't know what to do with it. But this year alone, I changed out an alternator, I bought a new set of tires, and I rebuilt my transmission. My wife is like, you better think about getting something new, because when you're in the middle of Arthur County and Siri doesn't talk to you, it's a long walk. So you can also see I'm a little geographically challenged. You probably wonder why in the world I left Dundee County open down there. I was so close to Dundee County, and I told Craig Bisher, let's leave it alone and go back, because that's a great excuse to get Connie out there. And you can see my day job got in the way, and I missed. I was told I should leave Pawnee and Richardson until the beautiful fall colors, and you can see I missed my target there. And then I am just really struggling with how you say Keapaha or close. Kepaha. I'm learning that in Nebraska, things aren't pronounced the way they're spelled. And that's the way you can fetter out a Nebraskan by choice. So Ronnie Green had an all-hands meeting with all the department heads, all of the deans, and you can read this. We're on an upward trajectory. We can't let the budget discussion pull us away from focusing on our strategic priorities. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I can't think of a better group of folks to talk about where we've been and where we're heading. And so with that, Dean Tiffany Heng-Moss, come on up.
We all get one slide, and we have, I think, 5 minutes and counting.
Right, so there it is. The clock is starting.
So I will do my best. Well, good morning. The college is now in its 145th year, and it is in a remarkable position to continue transforming the lives of our students here in Nebraska and around the world. And this would not be possible if it weren't for a committed group of faculty, as well as amazing students and alumni and engaged internal and external stakeholders. So I first want to take this opportunity to thank each of you for all that you do for our students. My comments today are going to focus on 3 areas that are of strategic importance for continuing to advance the teaching and learning mission of the college, and again, to best position our students for success. The first area is thinking about holistic student development by linking curricular, co-curricular, and experiential learning opportunities to best prepare our students to pursue careers that are going to address the grand challenges in the space of food, energy, water, and landscape systems. And I hope you all had a chance to review the spring update that we circulated last Friday. In there, highlighted some examples of some of these models for holistic student development. The second key strategic area is leveraging partnerships. And we want to leverage these partnerships, again, to provide our students with this holistic framework, but also an authentic educational experience. And so we're very fortunate in the college to have a number of partnerships. And it's important that we continue continue to nurture those partnerships and also be bold in our thinking about what are some new partnership opportunities. And this may be through public-private, global partnerships, as Vice Chancellor Boehm already mentioned. There are partnership opportunities that we need to continue to leverage with our Nebraska K-12 schools, as well as our 2- and 4-year partnership institutions around the state. And then finally, when we think internally at the institutional level, here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, as well as across the system level. And then the third strategic focus area that we've been focusing on is graduate education. And we first talked about graduate education at our annual college meeting back in August. And we followed this up with the units doing an assessment of their current graduate education programs through a SWOT analysis of each of these programs. The next phase in this process now is to go back to our campus community and gain insights through both quantitative surveys as well as qualitative interviews to be able to have an insight onto what are our competitive advantages across our graduate programs, and where are there opportunities for us to really build and leverage strength on strength. And then the third phase of this planning session will be a series of visioning sessions, and those are scheduled for April. Again, those were highlighted in the email message that we sent out last week, and I hope that you've all marked them on your calendars, because it's really important that we have broad engagement from our internal campus community as well as our external stakeholders. And really our goal here is to come together and think strategically about how we push the boundaries with a traditional graduate education program to think about more transformative models of graduate education that really provide our students with diverse career pathways, think creatively about funding mechanisms for our graduate students, as well as professional development opportunities for them. And so our goal would be that by the end of June, we have a strategic plan in place, and the strategic plan is inclusive, thinking holistically about the Institute from the Kasner perspective, the College of Education and Human Sciences, Ag Research Division, as well as Nebraska Extension. And so I hope that you will all plan to participate in this very important process. So my time is probably getting close. The Vice Chancellor is shaking his head. So in conclusion, I just want to reiterate how exciting of a time it is for the college, and that I'm very confident that the Institute will continue to be a leader in growing Nebraska and also helping to enrich the lives of our students as well as the citizens of our state and our global society. And so if you remember, one of the themes that I mentioned was building partnerships, and one important partnership for the college is with NCTA. And so now it's my privilege to turn over the mic to Dean Rosati.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's a pleasure for me to be with you this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture. Some of you may not have been to the college. We're located in southwest Nebraska. We have approximately 300 students on campus, and about 20% of those graduates transfer to four-year institutions, and mostly to UNL. The college is the system's two-year institution, and the college has two primary objectives. The first is to provide maximum access to higher education services for the people of Nebraska. We do that two ways, financially and academically. And the second primary mission is to prepare students for careers in agriculture and veterinary technology. The college has been successful at accomplishing that mission in these tough budgetary times, and I'm going to present some brief assessment data that support that claim. First, the college is open admission, so we accept all students that apply to NCTA, and the college is low cost. Our most recent financial aid statistic indicates that 73% of NCTA students receive a financial aid package, and the grant and scholarship component of that package, the part of the package they don't pay back, exceeds the cost of tuition and fees. So 73% of our students receive financial aid that covers tuition. They're only required to pay for room and board, books, transportation, those sorts of things. So the college is it's successfully completing its a mission of access, both academically and financially. How about in terms of our academic programming? I would contend that the college has been successful at its mission of preparing students for career success. We're using some federal government data to help us determine that. For the past few years, the IRS has been working with the Department of Revenue, with the Department of Education, to track college graduates. So when a student signs up for financial aid at NCTA, the IRS ties their social security number to our college, and then they track their employment and their income for a number of years after they graduate. This data was first reported in 2015, and for a workforce development kind of institution like NCTA, employment and salary are some pretty important statistics, so we look at these federal data. And based on that federal data, we find that NCTA is currently the number 11 U.S. two-year college for graduate salaries. So there's more than 1,000 two-year colleges across the United States, and there are only 10 of those 1,000 colleges where their graduates are earning more than NCTA graduates 10 years after initial enrollment based on tax records. So it's a pretty powerful statistic. It shows that employers value the graduates and they're successful in their jobs. Do they get jobs upon graduation? Well, looking at that statistic based on IRS records, NCTA is the number 7 two-year college in the United States on employment of graduates at 92% at graduation. Again, only 6 institutions in the U.S. exceed NCTA in that parameter. And finally, is it a cost-effective institution? And we have data on a return to education investment. And this is primarily a ratio of salary divided by cost of attending the institution. There's some other data that are used in that analysis, but it's primarily those two parameters. Salary for graduates divided by cost to attend. And when we look at that assessment, NCTA is the top two-year college in the United States. There are none that rank higher on that assessment. So I think these results, along with many others that we have, provide evidence that NCTA is accomplishing its mission as the open admissions workforce development institution in the system. We continue to have an impact in tough budgetary times, and we will continue to work with our colleagues in IANR to meet the needs of Nebraska residents. So with that, I'll turn it over to Beth Dahl, who will continue our analysis. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Someone told me a few weeks ago that a lot of these people don't really know who CEHS is. And so learning from my partners in IANR, I brought you a handout. This is who we are. The College of Education and Human Sciences is really sitting at a very unique intersection between the Institute for Ag and Natural Resources and Academic Affairs. And we see that as an advantage, and we're milking it for everything that we can. We also are a college that has been heavily impacted by the VSIP retirements, and that means depending upon our department, between a third and a half of our faculty are newly hired in the last 5 years. So we have a large cohort of faculty who, many of whom were hired from outside Nebraska, and we're bringing them into the state. Our goal is to make sure that they meet Nebraska and learn all of the advantages that this state has for scholarship as well as outreach. Let me give you some examples of how we're contributing to the Institute. First, in our Department of Child, Youth, and Family Studies. This department, among all the other things it accomplishes, is making some really key contributions to the Learning Child Initiative. And this is an area, early childhood across the College of Education and Human Sciences is an area where we've invested heavily. But examples of the statewide programs that we're disseminating, both online and through face-to-face contacts, include things like Eat Family Styles, so helping families and child care coordinators know how to train kids in eating habits that are really going to promote lifelong health, healthy eating. Growing Together. Growing Together is showing child care providers and families how to use outdoor environments as their classrooms for learning. It's another area where we really lead the nation in outdoor education. I Am Moving, I Am Learning. It's a program for young children that encourages physical activity or Safe Food, Safe Kids, reinforcing safe food handling by child care providers and families. So these are the kinds of programs that, that our faculty in child, youth, and family are developing through their research and their scholarship and taking out across the state of Nebraska. Textiles Merchandising and Fashion Design has a partnership that they have been building over the past several years with the Omaha Fashion Week. This is the nation's 5th largest Fashion Week event, and it now will incorporate the first UNL Student Spotlight, where our students in design and fashion will be part of this large Fashion Week event that occurs in Omaha. So I'm imagining all the youth we have throughout the state who are so invested in 4-H and apparel design and move up through the university and start to build their career, and now we're connecting them in with some important industry in the state. Faculty in Nutrition and Health Sciences successfully competed several years ago for NIH funding. The Center for Biomedical Research Excellence funded a Nebraska project called the Nebraska Center for the Prevention of Obesity, or NPOD. NPOD has then leveraged to secure 4 NIH R01 awards, 2 NEFA awards, and grants from the Gerber Foundation, the Rakes Foundation, the Egg Nutrition Center, among others. This project now is in the process of preparing its proposal for renewal, and so Janos, we wish you and your partners the best of luck as you move forward in this. Now, while faculty in these 3 departments are IANR funded, in many of their positions. In our other 4 departments, there is not necessarily an IANR-funded position, but it's really important to us that all of our faculty across all 7 departments connect with the state of Nebraska. So we have been taking busloads of faculty out with the cooperation and assistance of the Extension Centers. Chuck Hibbard has been very gracious in helping us with this. So far, 49 of our faculty have been on a bus to meet Nebraska. We have another trip going forward in March 9th. This will go up to northwest Nebraska. So I guess you would say that the purest form of flattery is imitation. So we're trying to build out that extension network throughout the college, and I want to thank you for helping us do that, and I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thanks, Beth.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you today and talk a little bit about Nebraska Extension. In 2014, we celebrated our centennial, our first 100 years of the Smith-Lever Act and the formality of cooperative extension work across the country. And we celebrated that here in Nebraska and thought about all of the accomplishments that we had over the prior 100 years, but we were a lot more interested and focused on what do the next 100 years look like of cooperative extension. And I think you can see that in 4 examples that I'm going to lift up for you today as we think about innovation, effectiveness, and impact in extension work here in Nebraska. I'm going to start on the top right with Project Sense. This is a project spearheaded by Richard Ferguson and his team. This is a in-field, real-time nitrogen application machine that uses sensors to determine how much nitrogen fertilizer to apply. And what's cool about this is they've been able to actually reduce nitrogen applications in the field by 50 pounds per year, with only a small reduction in yield, in corn yield. And so a huge opportunity to reduce cost of production, but also think about how do we minimize the impact of nitrogen on surface and groundwater. The other cool thing about this project, if you go to Crop Watch and look for Project Sense, you'll see that Laura Thompson is using some really cool high-tech presentation tools, such as virtual reality, to help people understand what this is all about. It's very, very cool. So Laura's doing some really good work there. We'll continue around to the lower right, Youth Entrepreneurship, a program that is led by J.C. Milius and Megan Berta. They've created what's called an Adventure Factory. And in this experience, they bring middle school youth together, pair them with local entrepreneurs as mentors, and they learn how to start a business, to be entrepreneurial, to take risks, and those kinds of things. In the past year, they delivered this program in 18 middle schools to 946 middle school students, and their evaluations indicate that these students increased by 50% their knowledge of what it takes to start a business. To the lower left, a focus on preparing for weather extremes, a project led by Tyler Williams and Ashley Mueller, focused on ag, businesses, and communities. And we all know in Nebraska that if you want to experience severe weather, it happens, and you never know when it's going to happen. So Mike, you're thinking about your old Suburban. I'm a little worried about you now, but it can happen at most any time. They're doing weather scenario planning to help farmers and ranchers and communities and businesses think about how they prepare for a severe weather event, and also, if it does happen, how they recover from it. And a project that Ashley is leading called Hail No, which helps growers understand what they need to do if a hailstorm impacts their crop, and whether to try to replant or salvage it or exactly what to do. And then the third one on the upper left, to me, is one of those really great examples of how extension impacts local communities. Now, I'm a big Cabela's fan, and when Bass Pro Shops bought Cabela's, I had this deep sinking feeling in my heart that my Cabela's was going away. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it does make me wonder what the young people in Sidney, Nebraska are thinking about every day as jobs leave with the takeover, with the buyout, and young people are wondering, do I have a future in my community? Do I have a future in Nebraska? What could I do? Well, there's a really cool project going on there led by Brad Barker and his team. It's called Sidney Create. It's a makerspace to help young people experience what it might be like to think about a career in some area of science, technology, engineering, or math. And what's really cool about this, it's tied to the Nebraska Innovation Studio on Nebraska Innovation Campus. And one of the things they're doing that I think is really cool, they are experimenting with something called telepresence robotics. So they have a robot here at Nebraska Innovation Studio, a similar robot, the same robot, in the Sidney Create Makerspace in Sidney. And as they control the robot here in Lincoln, the same robot in Sidney does the exact same thing. This is going to help us redefine what distance education looks like and how it works. So these, to me, are four really great and exciting examples of how Nebraska Extension continues to recreate ourselves, focuses on innovation, on effectiveness and impact for the people of our state. We know that much of what we do would not be successful if we didn't have great science to back us up. So I'm going to invite Archie Clutter to come up and talk about the Ag Research Division. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for allowing me this sprint. The mission of the Agricultural Research Division is to support the development of resilient food production systems for a growing global environment and population. And our faculty and staff continue to be outstanding in leading world-class research that integrates plant, animal, human, natural resource sciences to take integrated systems approaches to that tremendous challenge. Just a couple of metrics that reflect your success in that regard. Externally sponsored expenditures for IANR increased by 22% from fiscal 14 to fiscal 17 to a new high of just over $53 million. Externally sponsored expenditures per FTE member, per FTE faculty, increased last year to a new high of just over $172,000 annually. That's a reflection of the hard work and the success of you and your teams. Our faculty continue to compete successfully in a very competitive federal funding environment. In terms of large grants of $1 million or more, and there's reference here to one of two of those very large grants awarded, one of those indicated here from the National Science Foundation, a second one from the Department of Energy, to teams who are led by faculty members in the Center for Plant Science Innovation. These are teams that are certainly transdisciplinary. They also reach across colleges and across institutions. There's reference here to a large grant from the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research that's allowed us to extend the momentum that we have in beef systems research. And the Nebraska Food for Health Center continue to develop programs and develop momentum with significant foundation funding over the last year. So these are examples of the very large grants that our faculty have been able to achieve. These are so important to our programming and achieving our goals. I certainly don't capture everything here in all the large grants, but also important to achieving those goals are the smaller foundational grants. And just about every week we get news of our faculty's success in the foundational programs of USDA, NSF, and the National Institutes of Health. And so all these things are important to us succeeding and achieving our goals around these global challenges. It's also important to underpin these, and much of these efforts are possible through the faculty and staff support of developing and sustaining infrastructure. You can see a couple of examples there, including our newly opened field phenomics facility at the Eastern Nebraska Research and Extension Center. So my main message in this sprint is congratulations. It's thank you for everything you do. We're going to work really hard in the next year to support the development of you and your teams. We're going to focus on a theme of connect, connecting centers with centers, connecting faculty with one another, and connecting faculty with the external partners who are going to be so important to achieving these goals. Thanks. With that,
Thanks, Archie.
I think we're out of deans.
Yeah. It is really a pleasure to work with such an inspiring team. They like each other. They work across campuses. They work collaboratively. I said this last January, take our typical pyramid of an org chart and flip it on its head. The most important thing that we do is what you do. And we are here to support your good work, and those deans every day wake up thinking about how to advance the success of our students, our faculty, our staff, and make an impact here in Nebraska and around the globe. And so it's great. Thank you. And you all delivered. Perfect timing. This is a picture of an Alice Chalmers tractor that our tractor club worked on. I didn't know we had a tractor club, but we do, and they usually refurbish a tractor and get it up to, pristine. This wasn't the case with this tractor, so of course we know about the Homestead Monument down in Gage County in Beatrice. This tractor was taken off of the last homestead site in the United States of America, happened to be in Alaska, had to be taken out with a helicopter, found its way to Lincoln, was refurbished to the point where it would not corrode, and it's been taken down to Beatrice. I've yet to see it down in Beatrice, but pretty neat how we have kind of a recognition of the first homestead site and the last one in America. just a touch. And this is a transition to our people. I've said it over and over, and it really is true. Our people are most important. We've welcomed a number of new folks to Nebraska since September. Here are a snapshot of some of our faculty, but we've also had people shift from instructors to assistant professors and so forth and so on. We conducted, if you don't know, all administrators are required to go through a 5-year review. Truth be told, we were a little bit, with all of our transitions, behind the power curve. So this last fall, we were able to get back on track, and both Archie Clutter and Ron Yoder went through their 5th-year reviews. We had no less than 25 people involved doing a 360 review, got the data back, worked with them, and earlier this month, in fact, they're still waiting on their formal reappointment letter, but let's give both Ron and Archie a round of applause. Ron is on his way back from Washington, D.C. The Doherty Global Water for Food Center had a big event there, and so he was there. But you'll note that also in this reappointment, elevated Ron's title to Senior Associate Vice Chancellor. Amy Goodburn in the Office of Academic Affairs was had that promotional increase. I want to also punctuate this, that using the best in adaptive leadership, the Institute's in an amazing place, but we're constantly evolving. And one of the changes that I've made after listening and learning and watching and talking was to ask Ron to serve as my liaison to all of our academic unit leaders, so the 15 departments and schools. Current model is that the deans from CASNR and CEHS, ARD, and Extension were serving as the liaison. And while that worked tremendously, there is so much good work that these deans are moving that that's where I'd like them to focus their energy. And then the other thing this will do is provide a really nice, consistent engagement strategy for all of our departments. And so that is now in effect, and I appreciate everybody's willingness to try that experiment. I've also then asked Archie, in talking with some of our center directors, some of you in this room, I don't think we've been doing as good a job as we could have of engaging our center directors and our institute leads in critical conversations about advancing our communities of practice and making impact. And so I've asked Archie to essentially triage all of our centers and institutes within the institute, and then really, if you triage school department level centers that are nurtured by the departments, but then institute, UNL, and NU centers and institutes, and then pull that group together, much like we do the unit leaders, on a periodic basis. I'll leave that to Archie and to the center directors to figure that out, but we'll bring those folks together. Along with this, while it's not up here, Chuck Hibbard will be going through his 5th-year review this April. And one of the things I've asked immediately Chuck to do, he already had the 18 issues teams, extension issues teams in his space, but I've asked Chuck to really double down the nurturing of those teams so that we can bring those teams together with our center directors, with our department and school directors, so that we can really bring the entire leadership team of the Institute together 2, 3, 4 times per year to really think about where those gaps are, where the strategies are, and how we can build strength on distinctive strengths. So that's that piece. We have a number of upcoming searches. We are launching a national search for the permanent dean of CASNR. Internal candidates, qualified candidates, are highly encouraged to apply. CEHS will be doing the same thing here. This is really coming out of OAA. Beth reports both to Dondi Plowman and to me, and that search will launch sometime, as I understand it, late summer, early fall. We have 5 academic units that are looking for new leaders, and those searches are just now to the point where the search committees, through conversations with each of those units, have informed position descriptions, and we're getting that all ready to roll. Ron Yoder's overseeing those searches. I thought this would be important. One of the things that the deans were talking about before I arrived were what they considered the core expectations for our leaders, our academic leaders. When I came, I punctuated this really with 4 areas, and it's pretty simple. Every leader, center director, issues team lead, dean, vice chancellor, associate dean, department head, school director, 4 things. Number 1, there's an expectation that you foster an amazing, positive, forward-leaning culture and climate in your unit. Second thing is we have to be fiscally responsible, so there's a sense of fiscal acumen and aligning resources on things that matter. Third, I've talked about this since I interviewed, a very significant nod on inclusive excellence, on diversity, animating that diversity through inclusion and equity, and documenting that and taking that seriously. And the last is working in partnership with our faculty, students, staff, stakeholders to develop a common shared vision, a future vision that actually then will move the unit forward, and in doing so actually complete with milestones or markers of progress. If we care about where we're going, then we need to ask ourselves, how are we doing? Realizing that some of those markers are short-term, but many are long-term, and taking all that. So I wanted to share this with you because we're going to be having a lot of interviews, lots of candidates, and this is important. Also, this was publicly announced, but one of the other gaps that I noticed was really, while we have very capable hands in the Vice Chancellor's office, there was a lot that we just really needed to pay attention to around faculty success and academic leader success. For example, we talked a pretty good game about nurturing professional development of academic leaders, and some of you have been through LEAD 21 and the Food Systems Leadership Institute, but we had, outside of informal coaching, we had no formal onboarding program, we had no formal executive coaching of our leaders. We had to outsource this first year, but we have 11 of our leaders that are actually working with executive coaches that are exploring their leadership effectiveness and how they can, through their leadership effectiveness, nurture work with their units. This this is an internal search. We're just at the point of identifying candidates and visiting with those candidates. The intention here is this person will work with all of our units, our P&T committees, on promotion and tenure. It's a faculty-led process, but this individual will be there. This person will help with leader recruitment, leader onboarding, annual reviews, and how that happens, periodic reviews, and unit-level strategic planning. And while the buck stops with me as the Chief Diversity Officer, and my passion is there, as well as that of every leader, this person will serve formally as the Institute's Chief Diversity Officer. That will then interface and interact with other diversity officers across the campus, but also across the university system. New programs. We have a great program, at NCTA, a program where 3 semesters are done at NCTA in Curtis, and 1 semester is done in Mississippi, in Starkville, Mississippi. This is a program that is immediately responsive to the needs of our poultry industry, with Costco coming in crazy big numbers. They'll be harvesting 104 million birds a year. That's 2 million broilers a week. That's a lot of manure nutrient management, a lot of advanced bioproducts with all those feathers, and a lot of chicken. Costco has a goal to actually invest greater in Nebraska around dairy, around organic ground beef, and other poultry. And some of you, Galen Erickson and the integrated beef team, are actually working with them in that way. We have a great program. Tiffany can answer any questions, Ron can answer questions, a 3+3 law degree, where with the College of Law, students who are interested in pursuing a JD can actually move through the system more quickly. And then Kasner has, in italics there, a Rural Economic and Community Vitality Certificate. Badging and credentialing and certificates are definitely here and the wave, and this is working its way through the Academic Planning Committee for approval. Switching over to our physical environment, while the while the people are most important, oftentimes it's the changes in our physical plant that we see. Massengale Residential Center, wow, 92% occupancy. I helped the students move in. I think they thought I was strange, but people were taking pictures saying, look, he really does work. I'm like, really? But it was so much fun. When I got home that night, all my kids, they were both happened to be home. All they kept saying is, do you know your major? Do you know where are you from? What's your major? And I'm like, great. Keep me humble. Lots of facilities going on. This building will, this fall, will actually go through a transformation. It's going to be exciting. The dining hall is going to be moved down to the first floor. The dining facility will be opened up so that anybody can use it during the day, so that you simply pay. You're not paying $20 for a banana and a cup of coffee. So please think about how you would use it. Really neat. There will be a new front door. The front door, as we know it now here in the west in this courtyard, essentially that will be closed off. The split level that we enjoy here in this building, this floor that we're on, will essentially become, the whole floor plate will be normalized, which will make it much easier and much nicer as we have events here. There will be a coffee shop, and there will be, on the south side, there'll be a patio, a porch. And you'll be able to enter off of the green space, come in, and then engage. The bowling alley stays. The third floor pretty much stays the same. That kicks off this fall. We are in the, Barry can answer questions during the Q&A. The Christensen building at Meade is getting a much needed addition, so that's terrific. We're exploring in the final stages of housing at our research and extension center so that people can live and learn and engage. It's a big deal, and the Panhandle Research and Extension Center and also the High Plains Ag Lab, we're in those final stages of working through that. There will be a little bit of dust, construction dust in Ag Hall. We are moving the Global Engagement Office to the second floor. It is critical, given our reach across this world, that we have seamless interaction of Josh Davis and Liana and John and Blaine and that whole team, Brianne, with our extension, research, and teaching missions. And then we will move, the Vice Chancellor's suite will move upstairs, and essentially then we'll have all of the Vice Chancellor's team together on the third floor. And then the C.Y. Thompson transformation, most of you know we received a generous $10 million gift. It's a matching grant, so if you want to pull out your checkbook and help us out, Craig Bisher's in the back of the room. He'll tackle you on the way out. But the goal there is really to turn our CYT into something that looks like Adele Commons North, an amazing living learning. So this building's getting the love. The Massengale Center is just fantastic, CYT, and then we have Philly Hall. Philly Hall is going through, we're investing. In fact, if you look across from where we are now, where you see the arched windows and they're all bricked up, those bricks are coming out. We're opening all of that up so that you can actually see in and see out. We will be swinging the dairy store from its current location to the green side of the building, such that you can then come in, grab your ice cream, come out, and actually engage the green space. We are talking with the Sheldon Museum to actually open up a gallery here to explore through visual literacy what we do in the Institute. And we have some delusion of actually opening a Nebraska store someday, where we connect with our entrepreneur programs and we engage. So all of that is kind of pie in the sky. The windows are happening and the dairy store is shifting over. So that's some exciting stuff. You heard me talk about how every single square foot of space that we have, every single acre, we have 43,000 acres in the Institute across this amazing state. It's all about learning and exploration and engagement. And so we're walking the talk. We've engaged Kim Todd's design classes, both last semester and this semester, to help us identify and design the green space between, the connective space between all those adjustments. And we're serving as her clients, and it's pretty exciting. We also, as you know, those of you who love Burr and Fetty are sad. Those of you who are excited about transformations are excited. Burr and Fetty are now gone. We will be moving outdoor rec space over to the south of the rec center to include basketball, tennis. I know Becky's interested in that tennis, and then sand volleyball. And then right to the south of that, we have the new Ruth Staples and the Family Resource Center. This is a project that Beth Dole and her team are leading. It's a $17+ million project, and we will be really creating some amazing space for engaging with our youth, our children, but also our families, and bringing all of that together for healthy families, healthy living. A couple of other things that we can touch on if you have questions. We, of course, are working through the impact of the 25-cent mileage reduction rate to help us with this. Ron Yoder and Chuck Hibbard, through their leadership, we were able to secure 43 high-quality vehicles from the federal government. And part of that plan is to put 25 of those vehicles in strategic locations in greater Nebraska to increase and make sure that people have tools to do their jobs, our county-based folks. Extension educator salary adjustment. This was a partnership with the Faculty Senate's Faculty Staff Compensation Committee, where they identified with the best data they had back in June that there were gaps in salaries, that they identified gender equity gaps, which is just not where we want to be. And so over a 4-month period, we were able to bring the data that was necessary to look at those gaps. And in fact, we've invested nearly $200,000 of additional recurring funds to address pay equity gaps. While many of them were gender-based, there were also non-gender-based gaps, and 54 extension professionals received letters yesterday that they would see this bump in their January pay. And I just want to publicly thank the faculty senators and to Chuck Hibbard for his leadership at moving that along the way. Storytelling and communications couldn't be more important in this world. All you have to do is read the newspaper to see that people aren't hearing the amazing positive stories of IANR. And so I've asked David Jones, the interim head of Biosystems Engineering, and Ann Holtz from our IANR Media Group to work with a small group of department heads, center directors, and professionals in this space to assess internal to the Institute, where we have some near 30 to 45 people, depending on how you count it, engaged in storytelling. And to understand ourselves a little better, and then to think about what our core needs and functions are, and then come up with and propose to the Leadership Council of IANR a way forward. That way forward could be, hey, we're doing everything just perfectly, or we might want to make some adjustments. And that's a big thanks that goes out to those folks. Okay, last thing I'd like to pivot to is the budget. And this is Hank Bounds, a quote from Hank. I think all of you, yes, you received a note from Hank in talking with staff and faculty across the university. It was a pretty heavy, sober note, and it's got folks' attention. I want to talk about who Hank was really talking to when he sent that message out. I would say he wasn't talking to us. Maybe he was 1% of the time. He was talking to the governor, he was talking to the media, and he was talking to the unicameral, the senators, at the recent announcement. So this came out in the just earlier this month. More state cuts to the University of Nebraska, quote unquote, will be devastating, regents warn. Who are the regents talking to? They were talking to the unicameral, they were talking to the media, they were talking to the governor and his team. Of course, we're all reading these papers. and we're digesting all of this. Down in the nitty-gritty there, this is a follow-on to the governor's State of the State address, where he announced additional budget cuts based on the forecasting board's projection of $270 million shortfall. And what he proposed was a 2% mid-year rescission. For the University of Nebraska, that's 11.4. Sometimes you'll see it 11.5. Sometimes you'll read it as 11.6. I don't know how we can't get the numbers right, but 2% is 11.6 million to President Bounds. And then the governor has also proposed a permanent reduction in our fiscal 19 budget, which is the second year of this current biennium, of 4%. That is a $23.2 million permanent reduction. And all of this is being proposed on the cuts that we endured last year. Well, what does this mean, just boiling this right down to us in the Institute? This means that for FY18, we'll be required to return, if this goes forward, $1.4 million, $1.5 million in cash, and we would then be required, our share of the cut would be $1.6 million of permanent reduction in our base. Just to give you a little bit of flavor, in the last 13 months since I've been here with these cuts, this would total up to roughly almost $3 million in permanent reduction in our budget and almost $4.5 million returned as cash. Okay, so those are the numbers. Well, what does this mean for us? What this means is that if these cuts go through, and I would like to just say these are proposals from the governor. The unicameral is in session. They are debating. We will have our day, our hearing. President Bounds goes in front of the Appropriations Committee. I don't know, they could have picked a better day on Valentine's Day. So President Bounds at 1 o'clock down in the unicameral will be talking with Senator Stinner and the Appropriations Committee, and we'll be making the case that this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. Education is the backbone. PK through 12 plus higher education is the backbone to economic vitality and the vitality of our communities, both urban and our rural communities. It's right there. And so I think we're stuck in a bit of a catch-22. I'm one of the newest Nebraskans, and just like every other state, corrections, incarceration rates, really tricky. Healthcare costs, really tricky. And who's taking the brunt? It's the public PK through 12 and higher education. I don't know that there's a person in this room that doesn't believe that the backbone of a productive, forward-leaning society is education. And just to kind of bring this home, kind of breaks my heart, but playing on some of what Beth and our colleagues in CEHS work on, that if you do not, can't read by third grade, so these are kids we're talking about. If the kids can't read by third grade, they're four times less likely to graduate from high school. If you don't graduate from high school, you're 62 times more likely to be incarcerated. So if you can't read by third grade, you're 4 times less likely to graduate from high school. And if you don't graduate from high school, you're 62 times more likely to be incarcerated. So when I'm out there in Nebraska and I ask the judges and the folks, the prosecutors, how many 4-H'ers have you seen in your courtroom? They look at me, kind of smile and said, you mean the ones that, besides the ones who are here doing their internship because they want to be a judge or a lawyer or a public defender? Yeah, 0. So we know what the answer is. That, like George Washington Carver said, that education is that golden key that unlocks the door to opportunity. We know what the solution is, but we are caught in a pretty rough catch-22 cycle. And so unicameral's working hard, our elected officials are working hard, President Bounds, Marjorie Kostelnik is here, special assistant to the president, trying to figure out how we get through this. So, but there is some tough sledding, and we are going to have to do our part in this. There is no way that this is we're going to get through this without touching people if we have to, and programs in IANR. There's just no way. So much of our budget is, we've done the easy stuff. If you've been following this, the Academic Planning Committee, we put forth $1.2 million of permanent reduction on November 15th. The APC is in the final stages of kind of going through that. There's just no way around it. We're now into our programs. So what does this mean for us? I want to just go right back to where we're at. We cannot succumb to headlines like that previous slide. Understand that those headlines need to be said, they need to be stated, and the people in charge of the budget need to understand that cutting education is not a good idea. But I want you to take home the first part of this amazing interaction with you and all the amazing work that we're doing. The deans and I have been working with appropriate unit leaders to look at every single program that we have. And we've looked at every program since March. We've been going up and down. We've been using indicators and metrics, but know that indicators and metrics and numbers, as much as we like them, the quantifiable metrics only tell a portion of the story. And at the end of the day, it's a really human story. And again, will have impacts. Of all of the programs that the Institute, that you're involved in, we've got this down to 4 programs that we are really thinking hard about. 4 programs. And of those 4 programs, we've been able to start with the question, are these programs relevant? That's a simple question. Are they impactful for the citizens of the state to help people succeed? 3 of those 4 programs, the answer was yes. 1 of those programs, we're still struggling with trying to understand the richness and the impact of that program. And we're still exploring it. So maybe we'll end up with all 4 being relevant. But that's where we're at. That's the bottom line. And in those 4 programs, we think that we can probably find about $2.8 million of recurring money. In a perfect world, we'd be able to bring that money back to the center and redistribute it to the amazing programs that are making impact every day. A worst case scenario, we have some money available to respond, to do our part in a state mandated cut. Nobody wants to lose those funds. The other side of this is the people side. We have nearly 1,900 full-time and part-time seasonal employees at the Institute. We're in the space in this program of somewhere, depending on how many programs we actually have to engage, of touching somewhere between 15 and 25 people's lives. So out of 1,900 people, we're talking about 25. If you're one of those 25 people, this is hugely significant. It's the most important thing. If you're one of the 98% or 98.5% of IANR faculty and staff who aren't directly impacted, and this is the ugly thing about the human condition, you're all breathing a sigh of relief, saying, glad it wasn't my program, glad it wasn't me. And then very quickly, because we care about each other, then you're going to go through the same grieving process that those people whose programs have been impacted. Some people are going to be sad. Some will be shocked. Some will be angry. Some will be resolved. I saw this coming 10 years ago. And then some are already in that place of acceptance. So that's the human piece of what we're going to engage should this become a reality. And those are the same things that the president, the chancellor, the deans, the department heads, the center directors, our extension professionals, our stakeholders are going through. So I'm going to ask for your help. These are difficult times. The first pledge that I have is that we are not going to let our people hear anything through the media first, through the television. They'll hear it from me. So we will, if we need to move in this direction, personally engage all of our impacted faculty and staff and students, and we'll have a conversation. And then we'll be prepared for the reaction. And then we will work through the formal processes that give these programs the appropriate vetting here at UNL through the APC process. And then we will move things along. That's the first pledge. The second one is, I need your help. I need your empathy. If you're the large 98.5%, give or take, of the institute that aren't directly impacted, we need your empathy for our colleagues that are impacted. Okay? And then I need you to do this. F. Scott Fitzgerald quote, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still remain the ability to function." This, I think, in my book bag, I have a book on the humanities that I've been reading. And I'm glad I'm a liberal arts trained and educated individual, because one thing the humanities helped me as I was interested in STEM was to keep two diametrically opposed views of the world in my pea brain at the same time. And it's hard, and it doesn't make sense. What do you mean, Mike, that we're reinvesting new hires, that we're investing in a new building or renovating space? What do you mean, and at the same time, we're reducing and changing? All of this is being done to move our impact and our ability to move impact forward. And that's the commitment that we have to each other. So I ask your help. Somebody asked at Ronnie's all-hands meeting, what can we do? I'm feeling helpless. What I'm asking you to do is hold on to that momentum. Hold on to all of the amazing positive things that we are doing, and we are making an impact. Do not leave here thinking otherwise. We are making an impact every day, and we're going to continue to ratchet up, and we are going to build strength on distinctive strength. Period. There are some hard conversations for a very small number of our colleagues, and we need to be there with them. Okay? So that's my ask. Important dates, February 14th, I've already mentioned the Appropriation Committee. On February 28th, the next forecasting board comes out. I really think that we're not going to hear a lot out of the unicameral between the 14th and the 28th. And then we will, on the 9th of March, no later than the 9th of March, the unicameral's budget is public. So then we'll know exactly where we sit. And based on where we sit, then we will appropriately engage the shared governance model through the Academic Planning Committee with any permanent proposed reductions. Okay? Thanks for everything you do. Let's open it up for questions. Jessie's got the microphone. If she throws it at you, catch it. And I'd ask my colleague, deans, and anybody else we tag to be prepared to answer some questions. Come on. Everybody's ready to get out of here. No questions? Nothing? Liz, no questions? Chris, no questions? I'll call on you too, Chris. Okay. Well, I'll hang around if you have questions you want to engage. The deans will hang around. Thank you for everything you do, no question about it. And let's keep moving the needle forward and making those impacts. Thank you.